Every nation promises its every citizen's economic prosperity. Every leader speaks of growth, stability, and opportunity. But hidden beneath the rhetoric of progress lies one of the most insidious wealth transfers in human history. It operates in silence, strikes without warning, and steals from your savings account while you sleep. This invisible thief has a name: monetary expansion. And if you think printing governments have used this ancient money is harmless economic policy, you're about to discover how ordinary people escape wealth from trick to quietly conned for is always the same. Stimulus packages, infrastructure spending for centuries. The promise leaders announce or emergency of putting money into the economy, creating jobs and lifting relief programs. They spec magic. It's created by central, doesn't materialize from thin air through you is where that money comes from. It everyone up. What they don't tell utes the value of every existing one in every new dollar, euro or yen, deal goods or services. And no corresponding increase in actual to the money supply with banks at the stroke of a keyboard. Add a circulation. This is not when a government doubles the money supply overnight theory. This is theft disguised as policy. Your purchasing power doesn't stay in your savings account. The salary, the same. It shrinks. The cash in your wallet, the number bad investments or loose ecklessly make didn't spend rise less tomorrow than it did yesterday. You worked months to earn. All of it by extracted from your wealth, your job. The value was simply to those first and redistribute in line to spend the newly created money. The mechanics are deceptively simple. Central banks create money electronically and use it to buy government bonds, corporate debt, or money flows first other securities. This fresh to banks, financial institutions, and government agencies. They spend it at today's prices before the inflationary effects ripple through the economy. By the time that money reaches ordinary workers through wages or benefits, prices have already begun to rise. The wealthy capture value at yesterday's prices, everyone and connected costs. It's a wealth transfer mechanism, else pays tomorrow's ineffable, more efficient than any tax collector, more silent than any pickpocket. History reveals this pattern with brutal clarity. During the French Revolution, the government issued assignats. Paper money backed by confiscated the economy, and fun promised it would stabiliscated church lands. Politicians public works. Instead, they abandon. Prices printed with D became unaffordable, and ordinary spiralled upward, break savings evaporate. Meanwhile, Russians watched their life par with those new currency bought access to the inflation struck. The revolution that real assets before promised equality delivered the opposite. A massive transfer of wealth from the poor to the politically connected. The American Civil War tells the same story through different characters. Both the Union and Confederacy discovered that fighting required more money than taxation could provide. So they printed, fed greybacks, and both currencies lost Union-issued greenbacks. The Confederacy issue value as the printing presses ran. Confederate soldiers' monthly pay. Southern inflation became so extreme that A couldn't buy a single meal. Families carted wheelbarrows of cash to purchase gold or goods bread. Yet those who owned land that couldn't be printed the one side victived. The war ended with revealed the same truth. When aureus, but both currencies' governments create money to fund their priorities. Ordinary people pay the bill through diminished purchasing power. Fast forward to the 20th century, and the pattern accelerates. Weimar Germany faced crushing reparations after World War I and chose the printing press over political honesty. By 1923, prices twice daily demanded payment. Workers doubled every few days ved as their life earner's star evening. Pens worthless by wages were because their morning stacks played with children. Meaningless numbers savings became of currency because paper money had become cheaper out. Class was Y than actual paper. The middle debtors who repaid loans transferred to dare their wealth with worthless marks, and to speculators who But the collapse.D borrowed heavily before extremes to see this theft in action. Every modern economy you don't need to look at historical practices, monetary expansion as standard in quantitative easing, load policy. When central banks engage gearing interest rates to zero or purchasing trillions in government bonds, they are creating money. financial crisis. The justification changes, pandemic response, economic stimulus, but the mechanism remains identical. New money enters the system through banks and financial markets, inflating asset prices first. Stocks soar, real estate values climb, and bond prices rise. Those who own these assets see their wealth multiply. Those who don't watch their savings lose ground to rising costs. The cruelest aspect of this system is how it masquerades as help. Governments announce stimulus payments to households while simultaneously creating far more money that flows to financial institutions. A family might receive a $1,000 check while banks receive billions in newly created liquidity. The headline focuses on the direct payment. The wealth transfer happens in the shadows through asset price inflation that benefits those who already own substantial portfolios. This hidden tax operates with surgical precision. It targets savers, retirees on fixed incomes, and workers whose increases. SP wages lag behind price heirs, those with debts denominated in the currency being debased, those with assets that rise with inflation, and those positioned to receive create the new need money first. The redistribution flows predictably upward, from the careful saver to the leveraged speculator, from the pension fund to the private equity firm, from Main Street to Wall Street. The genius of this system is that most people never connect rising the dots. They see greedy corporations' prices and blame, supply chain disruptions, or market speculation. They rarely trace the inflation back to its source, the expansion of the money supply itself. Meanwhile, the architects of monetary policy speak in technical jargon designed to obscure rather than illuminate. They discuss accommodative stances, yield curve control, and forward guidance as if these were neutral engineering adjustments rather than deliberate choices about who wins and who loses. Federal Reserve minutes read like academic papers, filled with charts and projections that mask the fundamental reality. Every decision to expand the money supply is a decision to tax savers and reward borrowers, to punish prudence and subsidize speculation. The timing of these policies reveals their true nature. When Wall Street faces a crisis, central banks move with lightning speed. Emergency meetings are called, interest rates are slashed, and trillions appear overnight to stabilize markets. When ordinary families face foreclosure or bankruptcy, the response is measured in months or years of legislative debate. The message is clear. The system prioritizes financial over economic justice stability, asset prices over purchasing power, and the portfolios of the wealthy over the paychecks of the working class. This acceleration has reached unprecedented levels in recent decades. Since the 2008 financial crisis, central banks worldwide have created more money than in the previous century combined. The European Central Bank, the Bank of Japan, and the Federal Reserve have expanded their balance sheets from hundreds of billions to tens of trillions, justified as temporary emergency. Each expansion was medicine to prevent economic collapse, yet the medicine became permanent and the patient became addicted. The consequences compound over generations. Young adults today face housing costs that consume half their income, not because houses became more valuable in any real sense, but because decades of monetary expansion inflated real estate beyond the reach of ordinary wages, skyrocketed not. College tuition has because education improved credit allowed institutions to capture dramatically. But because easy, the expanded money supply through higher prices. Healthcare, childcare, and basic necessities follow the same pattern. The money created to stimulate the economy gets absorbed by sectors that can raise prices faster than competition can contain them. Meanwhile, the official statistics state the reality experienced by most that governments use to measure inflation systematically under like food and energy, by families, by excluding volatile items using substitution methods that assume people will buy cheaper alternatives when prices rise, and by adjusting for supposed quality basement. The government can create trillions wileized version of monetary day improvements. The Consumer Price Index presents a sanity transfer to continue while claiming inflation remains modest, allowing the wealth maintaining the illusion of price stability. The international dimension of this system multiplies its power. When the United States expands its money supply, the effects ripple through the global economy because as the world's reserve currency, foreign the dollar serves whether to allow central banks must decide their currencies to appreciate, making them competitive, or to match exports and American monetary expansion, importing inflation into their own economies. The result is a coordinated debasement where every major currency loses value simultaneously, making the theft harder to detect and impossible to escape through simple currency. Emerging markets face an exchange, even more brutal version of this dynamic. When developed nations expand their money supplies, cheap dollars flood into developing countries, inflating asset bubbles and creating the illusion of prosperity. But when monetary policy inevitably tightens, capital flees just as quickly, leaving behind crashed currencies, bankrupt companies, and populations impoverished by the boom-bust cycle they never chose to in. The pattern has crisis blame participated on local system that across Latin decades, each America, Asia and Africa, for repeat monetary mismanagement rather than the global creates these cycles. So the next time politicians promise their spending will help you, remember that the help comes with a hidden price tag paid through the silent erosion of your purchasing power. Monetary expansion is not economics. It is organized theft, dressed in the language of policy, and sold as progress. The only protection is understanding the game before it bankrupts you. If this opened your eyes to the theft hiding in plain sight, hit subscribe. History has the answers.